We scoured the internet to find the best and worst PvP advice out there, looking everywhere from Reddit to the nasty underbelly of the official WoW forums. We even found this post by Peekaboo giving his PvP tips to players all the way back in Shadowlands. Man, those were some very awful times. But was the advice given by a Volpera prot warrior on the WoW forums even worse? We were about to find out. And for every tip we find, we're going to either give it a thumbs up if it's good, thumbs down if it sucks, and then a meh if we think it's neutral. Our journey will start in the depths of the official WoW forums, which is a place known for having suspicious characters. And what better place to find them than this helpful thread titled Positivity and Helpful Advice, which surprisingly we might have found with this comment for casters, offering the advice to juke less. Is this really the golden ticket for dealing with all the micro CC in WoW? Let's attack this from both angles. On one extreme, juking is a vital mechanic to master for any caster. Saying to simply not juke is bad advice, since you can gain so much momentum with a well-timed precog. Many lower-rated players like to kick somewhere in the first half of the cast, and it's up to you to download data on your opponent by picking up kicking patterns. But on the other extreme, juking too much can definitely hurt your damage, since you can spend more time faking your casts than actually soaking an interrupt. And at that point, you're pretty much outplaying yourself. And even at higher ratings, spam juking can backfire, since better players will often hold their interrupt anyway. That's right, many of the best players do what we call late kicking, which means using your interrupt super late into the cast. This is broken for several reasons. Number one, people are significantly less likely to juke at the very end of their cast anyway. And number two, by kicking late, you make your opponent waste time by fake casting over and over. By late kicking or holding your kick, it's like you're interrupting them for free. Late kicking is just one of the hundreds of mechanics you can learn at skillcap.com, where we focus on teaching what actually can increase your rating. And right now, we're rolling out updates to all of our class courses, teaching you the exact fundamentals you need in order to carry. We focus on teaching WoW from your perspective, with our ultimate goal of making sure you improve. And that's why we offer a 400 rating gain guarantee. If you don't rank up, you don't pay. It's as simple as that. To get access to hundreds of exclusive guides, be sure to click that discount link below. All right, back to the video. Is saying to juke less good advice? In some contexts, yes, but take it with a grain of salt. Another common question we see asked on Reddit is how to position. We saw this thread from a Wrath of the Lich King Andy asking why when he watches rank 1 streamers, they seem to care at all about positioning in solo shuffle, with the top reply saying that people who don't care about positioning are clowns. And here's the hot take: positioning is less important than most players think. Some players tend to think that there is some mysterious pixel you can stand on to avoid CC or damage, which is a belief that might come from other games where there are a ton of these magical spots on every map, and knowing how to abuse specific angles can give you a tactical advantage. Now, in previous expansions like Wrath of the Lich King, positioning mattered a lot more than it does today. Classes had significantly less mobility and worse defensive kits, which meant getting caught out in the open could easily be a death sentence. But after years of mobility and defensive power creep, positioning isn't as strict, especially in solo shuffle, where games can be pretty chaotic. While there are definitely ways to abuse positioning, especially as a caster, you should never overlook good defensive play. The best players in the game aren't micromanaging their positioning all game, but instead waiting for very specific moments to avoid damage and CC. If a rank 1 DPS knows their healer will be CC'd soon and they don't have any defensives ready, they will do what we've called pre-kiting, which involves avoiding damage before it becomes lethal. So even though positioning does matter in Arena, it's not some magical ticket to rating gains, especially these days. Now, let's argue over one of the oldest debates in PvP, racials. We found this post on Reddit saying that racials don't matter is really bad advice. Now, I'm sure there are some of you ready to drop your hottest takes on this subject. And to address the elephant in the room, yes, your racial ability or passive can have a positive impact on gameplay, but by how much is the real question. For instance, playing a gnome priest into a balanced druid will give you some unique counterplay, but in the priest v priest mirror, you're going to be crying gnome tears against any undead. For the most part, the benefits of racial abilities and passives are isolated to these small micro interactions. There are exceptions, however, like Night Elf, which is arguably the best race overall, and is at least A tier for most specs. But if you play Assassination or Outlaw Rogue, or even Feral or Resto Druid, Shadow Meld instantly becomes S+. Orc is still consistently strong after all these years, and that probably won't change. And with the exception of Nightborn, whose signature ability is an AoE slow on a 3-minute cooldown, most racials are at least decent. We like this response to the thread where a user mentioned that overall, racials are just a singular part of anyone's gameplay. While they are important in some situations, they're not a catch-all solution to anyone's PvP problems. Just think about how many actions you perform in a given arena game. Your racial is just one button in a sea of thousands of key presses every game. So is saying racials don't matter good advice? Meh, kinda true, but other things matter a lot more. And this is why we like the advice given on a different thread about how to improve as a quote-unquote mediocre player. The advice was simple: do more damage, be more flexible with your CC, and avoid overlapping defensives. These are what we would consider the fundamentals of PvP. If you watched our Road to Gladiator series from back in Shadowlands, this is more or less the same order of fundamentals we taught to our rival-rated team. Many players get caught up in thinking that WoW PvP requires you to master a ton of secret hidden mechanics while having a ton of game knowledge. And while these things certainly help, damage always comes first because it will carry everything else. And as long as you're doing your rotation 90% correct, you can climb to decent ratings. Think of damage like a universal PvP modifier. Doing more damage will make your CC more effective, while actually giving you some hidden defensive benefits, since players will be forced to play under increased pressure. Now, to get past the theory and into the practical, there is one rule you should always remember for maximizing damage and healing: minimize dead globals. Try and press an ability every time the global cooldown lets you. Even if you are kited or getting kited, always press something. This even applies to all you healers. Even if there is no damage to heal, it's always worth it to stay ahead on maintenance, refreshing HOTS, reapplying Earth Shield, or simply mashing an offensive dispel if you have one. So even though sticking to the fundamentals is a bit vague, we think it's very good advice. We also really like these tips from a high-rated healer on the WoW forums, giving some advice for healing low MMR. Mainly to just focus on healing and don't try to contribute too much offensively, especially when it's not safe. One other thing he mentioned is to not overreact to CC or overcomplicate positioning. Not every CC chain you encounter in Arena is dangerous, and sometimes it's even beneficial to tank crowd control intentionally, since it can reset diminishing returns, which protects you against further crowd control later on. And even in high-rated lobbies, the best healers are constantly sitting CC, either because they're sticking to a really efficient healing rotation, or by pre-bulking their team in advance before any crowd control lands. Finally, even though pushing in aggressively to win the game can work, it can also easily backfire, especially if your teammates aren't aware of what you're doing in the first place. More often than not, it's better to let your team win the game for you, which requires you to provide them with stability. And one thing we would add as a piece of advice for any healer, but especially ones at lower ratings, is to really fine-tune your opener. The first 30 seconds of each round are crucial to master, since bulking up your teammates in advance and trading the right set of cooldowns early can prevent things from spiraling out of control later on. In fact, for most healers, there's a single script that you can safely follow in 90% of solo shuffle openers, which will prevent most early game headaches, which can snowball into having a much stronger mid and late game. This is why, as part of our Season 3 updates, we made sure to make sure every healer had their opener video up to date. Healing is significantly less stressful when you learn a single opening script. Overall though, we like the advice that healing at low MMR doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Focus on stability and you will gradually climb. But obviously not everyone was giving good advice on the internet. Take for instance this response on the WoW forums to someone who was looking for keybinding help. This Volpera suggested an add-on to hide your keybinds, which doesn't really help. It's like telling someone learning how to drive to just do it blindfolded. But below that, there was actually some decent advice to develop a keybind system. I'm sure a lot of you out there are already doing this, but if not, it could save you tons of headaches when playing new alts. The idea is simple: set up some universal keybinds to use across every character. If your main is rogue and you have kick bound to F, you should make that your universal bind for all melee interrupts. You should also do the same for your defensives, especially ones that perform the same function in PvP. Is hiding your keybinds the best way to memorize your spells? Definitely not. And speaking of bad advice, we didn't like this response to a question about learning other classes' abilities. Obviously, to excel in PvP, you're going to need some basic knowledge of other classes. Unfortunately, the highest rated comment in this thread gave very misleading advice to just install nameplate cooldowns, which is problematic for a few reasons. For one, if you don't know what every cooldown does in the first place, having all of them clumped together on a tiny bar won't help you at all. Secondly, displaying cooldowns on nameplates is objectively bad, because the moment someone goes off screen, you have no idea what cooldowns they have available. And third, and possibly the most important for any DPS, is the fact that nameplates are literally the most valuable real estate you have on your screen. They're kind of like the Swiss Army knife of your UI, and when set up properly, you can track important debuffs, isolate enemy cooldowns, and even avoid tons of CC mistakes, all while keeping your eyes focused on enemy positioning. Instead of nameplate cooldowns, we highly suggest spending the time setting up your nameplates to condense the most vital information. If you're a Skill Cap subscriber, we've already done all this work for you, saving you countless hours. Just head over to the Skill Cap website using the link in the description below for a special discount. Then select the War Within, navigate to the Add-ons tab in the top right, enter your battle.net, and then hit Confirm to generate your premium code. You'll then be able to paste this code into your Skill Cap add-on. to import the Better Blizz Plates profile, which after a few clicks will set up your nameplates perfectly. This feature is only available to skill cap members who also get instant access to thousands of guides, including brand new updates to every class course. Best of all, everything we offer is backed up by a rank up guarantee. If you don't gain at least 400 rating while using our service, you'll get a full refund, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to start your journey today. For now, we want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.